Hey, it worked for us for the first time in a long time. It worked. No, it sort of worked. Welcome to Property Banter. Mark Armstrong, CEO and co-founder of Rate My Agent, and joining me as always, Russell Cambridge, director of Biggin and Scott Richmond. How are you, Rusty?
Excellent, Mark. How's the week, and where do we find you?
Where do you find? Where am I?
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm at home. No, I'm in some weird, funky office. If that with some weird, funky bin. Hey, it's been
last week. You were down at the surf. You were busting the.
I was.
How did you go?
Last week, you know what? I've decided that I shouldn't say I'm getting too old for surfing, but I just really struggle nowadays. So bloody annoying when my kids are dropping in on me and laughing at me and getting barreled and yeah, it's pretty bloody annoying, to be honest. But what a week! I mean, what have you done this week? I heard a little whisper that you've been out and about.
I've been out and about. Got the haircut done. Look at that.
Yeah, I saw that. Go again. It's balding. There's a
lovely.
I love it.
Lovely.
There's nothing more enjoyable than a bald person seeing another person going bald. It probably is the greatest thing that can happen to a bald person.
No, I've got the plugs, I've got the week, so we should be fine. Hey, the other thing is, at lunchtime today, I went to one of those places where they give you a knife and fork and someone gives you the food.
What?
Restaurant.
Yeah. Not the dining room.
Not the dining room. It was fantastic, and the hardest thing to work out was to remember which hand you put the knife and which hand the fork, because it's all been dips and pizza.
That's right, and fish and chips. Hey, mate.
But it's kind of weird because they got this social distancing. Say, how have you been? That was your company.
And only 20 people, but soon we're going to be back to 50, and then we're going to be back to 100, and we're going to be back to footy games and
we're going to be broadcasting from our favourite steak place, right?
We are that we are certainly going to. Hey mate, we've got a great show. We've got a great guest today, Shane Beaumont, who likes to do things a little bit differently. We're going to talk about stamp duty and $25,000 government grants. Lots to talk about.
We have. Hopefully we can fit it in.
All right, as I said, we've got Shane as our special guest, Shane Beaumont from One Residential in Perth. As I said, he likes to do things a little bit differently. We actually had Shane on Property Banter. Well, he was our banana of the week a little while ago. Let's see what. I don't know if you're there, Shane, but
this is his version, not our version.
welcome, Shane. Just a little bit of a snippet there. You do things a little bit different. Welcome to Property Banter. I can't find my stop sharing. There it is. Stop sharing. Welcome, Shane. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. We had a little bit of a lend of you last time we showed that. You were our banana of the week, but you love to do things a little bit differently. How is the Perth market going?
Perth market, as strange it is, if you look at April was the lowest sales we had across the board since, I think, 1979. Perth is obviously a lot smaller than what it is today. The month just gone, things almost basically, it's like completely different. Probably the best market conditions we've seen since 2014. So as an office, we had a record month, but across the board, people I think had a lot of sales. Inquiry was up. April was the actual amount of sales that took place in April. By the 9th of May, there was more sales that had already taken place than the whole of April. And that's obviously when Morrison stood up and said, you're pretty much stuffed for 6 months. People went, oh, that's the case. But we've obviously moving a bit quicker out of the quarantine or isolation and social distancing a bit more than what is over east. We've got a beautiful state here. So people are getting a bit more confidence. But the biggest indicator is the fact that we're down to 11,000 properties on the market, which is the lowest we've had again since 2014. So
now we're virtually brothers, Shane. I used to sell real estate in the same suburb you did back about 28, 30 years ago.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about Gosnells Can you tell us what the average price is there and what type of property you specialise in?
Yeah. Well, 28 years ago, our prices are about back to that level at the moment. So things have recovered well. Now, look, the median house price, to give you some idea, there was in Gosnells alone, and I sell probably 50, 60 a year in Gosnells and the other 40 all over Perth through referrals and our marketing getting called in, which is really good. Average price went from about 360, it's down to 260. And transaction levels back in 2014 were 600 a year. We're about 180 a year. And it's been like that for the last couple. So we expect it to be better, obviously, over the next 12 months. Before this COVID situation hit, we were like, finally, we're going to start to see some capital growth. But all things being considered, if the market as it is today stays the same, we'd be pretty happy because it's fair for buyers and sellers. There's not an oversupply. And I think any area where you've got higher investment portfolio or a share, if they're not getting returns and the rentals pull back, which is what's happened here, they tend to bail out pretty quickly. So we had a real big oversupply in those areas, but it has balanced out now.
And you're about 25 kilometres from the Perth CBD on the south side, yeah?
That's right, yeah, on the south side. Good trade, like the actual area's got really good schools. They've come a long way. I think more than zoning or anything else and infrastructure, schools have become a huge part of where buyers or families want to be.
Yeah.
So the schools actually in the area have a good name, got good assistance and what have you. In WA, they've got a big trend pulling away from some of the private schools at maybe 30,000 a year to go into an area which you're probably paying overs for the area, but if you're getting unbelievable education at a state school, they're the hottest areas we have in Perth at the moment.
Now, we were talking a little bit just before the show. We have a bit of envy here because your contracts, when you do a deal, are only about 2 pages thick and they're all conditional, but do you still have what they call a 48-hour clause that if someone wants to gazump or make a better offer than the offer you've got on the table, if it's still conditional, you give that person an opportunity to...
Yeah. So a 48-hour clause is really only used in WA if you are subject to the sale of a property. It's actually a 2 business day clause of 48 hours. What happens is if you have an offer accepted, you continue to market the property as if it wasn't under offer, no sticker, nothing changes. But if another offer comes in, you would then give the initial buyer that was subject to sale the notice, and they have 48 hours to basically say they're going ahead or they miss out.
Wow.
It's not very often, seldom used if it's just a normal subject to finance deal.
Gotcha.
How often does that happen, Shane? I mean, is it? I guess it's only in a strong buyer market that you get in competition like that, and those things happen. You know, you probably haven't experienced that for a little while.
Look, they've happened a bit more recently that subject sales have come to fruition because, as I say, there is stock levels are less and properties are getting chewed up a bit quicker. The issue is with the subject to sale, whether it be just a WA thing, owners don't treat the offer a lot of the time with the same respect as what a just subject to finance or a cash offer would be. So we often say to our buyers or sellers at the time, get your property sold, negotiate a longer settlement, then go shopping. And I know firsthand, if I've got a subject to sale offer and a subject to finance, one could be 530 and there's one at 550 subject to sale. You'll get it probably for 20 grand less if you're not attached to other sales, because people have lost confidence in our market so often that in 30 days' times, if you haven't sold, you're probably going to be coming back and renegotiating anyway because you're going to have to drop your price.
Gotcha.
So that's what tends to happen a bit.
Hey, Shane, I said you like to do things a little bit differently. Rusty, I don't know if everyone knows, I didn't have any audio on that last thing, so it didn't go according to plan. We fucked it up again. When I say we, I mean, but I think when you put yourself out there, like you do, you which is great, and we all should put ourselves out there. I mean, doing that little press conference thing you do, first of all, is that an expensive exercise for you to go through and produce something like that? And who are you really targeting there? I mean, do you get business from doing that sort of thing?
I do get, so what I found is if you look at every market update across Australia, it's typically an agent sitting out the front, talking percentages, this and that, the front of the local cafe. And like a video on property, it becomes almost the norm. So I spoke to the guys at Crib Creative, which is a marketing company in WA. I do all my stuff with them. I come to them with some wacky ideas, and they typically embrace them. But what I wanted was to keep people's attention. And what I think when you see those videos, the first thing you typically look at is how long it's going to go for. And some market updates go for 3 or 4 minutes. So what we did, I thought, when I see the attraction of live is you don't know what's coming. So watching that press conference, and obviously I give them a heap of questions, and I just say, look, 3 or 4 people in the office, just no one in particular want to throw me the question. I know the answers. At the moment, it looks staged to a degree. I mean, you might think it's staged, but that's one take. It works more well. And I had the amount of people that were tagging us, friends, and going, hey, look at this. Yeah. Whereas I know that just the boring agent sitting out the front talking about how good they are and percentages, I think that's something.
Are you a wannabe coach? Are you a wannabe football coach? Is that what you aspire to be ultimately? John Walshfold, or did you want to be Mick Malthouse? What was the goal?
No, I do like press conferences, I must admit, but the good thing about that is it's engaging. Well, I think it was engaging. The feedback we got from a lot of people was much more engaging. The only time my demographic typically see people in a suit doing the old lookout over the pool and that sort of stuff, typically is they're going for a job interview or in court. So I try to break the barriers down so it's approachable. Agents aren't like the best at times. So I think if you can just break that barrier, they go, you know what, he's not taking himself too seriously.
And we've got some evidence
I think that helps a lot when people, again, already don't like you.
Yeah, and Shane, for the record, the last time, I thought it was great. Russell was the one that bagged you out last time. I was actually defending you because, I mean, realistically, there is no such thing as bad publicity, though. You know, getting yourself out there, people don't remember, they just remember you. Yeah. But as we were talking about before, you know, when you put yourself out there, you
wouldn't have a review business, would you, Mark? There's no such thing as bad publicity. Is that a plug for your own business again?
I neglect to mention that Shane is the Western Australian Agent of the Year. 2 or 3 years running, Shane. How many years?
3. Well, I've received 4 awards. 3 were for Rate My Agent of the Year for WA. The 4th was Banana of the Week.
That's right. As I said, we do have to deal with some negative feedback. You know, you have got a good, hopefully this audio works. Is it going to work? Hang on. No. Bear with me for a second. Bloody do this. Share screen. Audio wasn't going to work. It gets me every time. Why do they make you do that? Hang on. Sorry, guys.
This is why you're a agent.
Anyway, take 5.
We have some great comments and we have some not so nice comments, such as, Shane, you mentioned separate living areas. Can I have a separate living area, preferably in another postcode away from my husband? That's not very nice. If you listen to Simon, you have f***ing rocks in your f***ing head. My name is Shane, but I do appreciate the input. 240 square metre floor plan is spacious. My shed is bigger than this. It's a pretty big shed. A highly desired pocket of the area. This does simply not exist. There are some great pockets of the area, I assure you. If it's not bad enough, we see your signs everywhere. Now you're on my f***ing news feed. F*** off.
That last one, I wanted to finish on that last one because we get a bit of that at Rate My Agent. You know, you're on my, you know, we're sharing review. I get off my fucking newsfeed though, so I was like, well, just delete it. Don't bloody bag us out for it. I mean, that's sort of people.
What I got out of that, Mark, did you know your wife was looking to move to WA?
I just know she's looking to move just as far away. No, go for it.
You do cop a lot more so. My mates actually probably give me more shit than even the clientele. But I guess if you're going to be sensitive for that, I've got this one bloke that just goes around going, can't afford socks. And I just said to him, look, mate, it was the 90th sale for the year. I can't wait for the 100th so I can go buy a pair. Like, I don't really care that much. But he does go on every single post.
Are you a shoes no sock man?
There's an old saying about this sort of stuff. It
depends on the temperature, but the problem.
We're breaking up a bit there, but I was just going to say that there's an old saying
What
about
is
this.
it?
There's only one thing worse than people talking about you, and it's them not talking about you. And it's very true. If they're talking about you, it means that you're getting through, you're cutting through.
Yeah.
Because in this business, it's hard to cut through. I mean, you want people talking about you, good, bad, or indifferent. You want to just form an impression in their minds.
Shane,
Hey.
in selling real estate in Perth, is it suburb specific, or do agents tend to spread their wings a little bit across multiple suburbs like they do in Sydney? In Melbourne, it's a little bit more suburb centric. In Sydney, they spread their wings. What's it like in Perth?
Yeah. I think traditionally it is suburb biased, but I was pretty lucky in my first year of real estate. The first property I sold was in South Headland, and I got, I guess, taught on a Genman system. So all they said was, here's the phone, here's the expired listings, call A to Z. And I just got all the way to S, South Headland. Guys like, oh, this agent's doing absolutely nothing. Can you sell the home? And I was like, well, yeah, okay. So we sold the home. Now, South Headland is the top end of where the mining and what have you is. I didn't go there. We listed it, we sold it, and we marketed differently to what they were doing. They were local, pushing it to local buyers. No one in South Headland is going to be buying if you're local. But we put it online and we got a great result. So in my mind, it broke that mooring line of barrier, thinking that you have to be local. I think it'd be easier if you did, but I grew up in the area. So I don't think you need to be in the area, but what you do need to know is, one, what's selling. You need to have amazing product knowledge. And if you are going to be dominating an area, it's what you do in the community more so than where you live or where you're based. Because with Facebook and these powerful things, I've got a page called Lost Gosnells. We're giving that much to the community and not wanting anything in return. They go, you know what, he's not bad. If they're all dickheads, he's the dickhead I'm going to choose. I get called in all over Perth because I guess people see a video of me selling a property and they go, Shane, I know it's not in your area, but I'm prepared to, could you sell for my friend? Because they saw a video of another property. So we get good momentum if you market a property well. So I've been selling a lot in Dianella. I got Rating Agent Dianella Agent of the Year this year, which I was blown away. I was very happy with. All we're doing is just every time we list a property, giving it that much exposure through all avenues that they're going, hey, would you do that for my property? So it's very, that's why I guess some of the best reps in Australia aren't guys that have been around for 30 years. They're guys that embrace what's happening now and adapt and don't think, oh, this is the way you do it. And that's why you can fast track it so well.
Well, you look at our great friend Josh Teslin, Agent of the Year. I mean, what's Josh? Is he 23 years old or something crazy? He's selling he sold 113 properties last year. He's on track to sell 150, 25. Close enough, Emma. But he's 25 years old and he'll sell 150 properties this year. And he's changing the whole mold. He's just doing everything his own way and he's smashing it. Amazing.
Shane, do you market your properties predominantly
so people think
through
that
Instagram,
video,
Facebook, or do you use a portal such as Domain and realestate.com? And I believe
everything.
Footy Stadium's Domain Stadium, isn't it, over in Perth?
Yep. So we've got Optus, which was Domain, but now Subiaco's no longer. So it's Optus Stadium. But with regards to, I guess, marketing your property, what happened is a lot of agents will go, oh, we don't do video because it's not a $3 million home. And they've got sort of the Gavin Rubinstein, want to be Gavin Rubinstein sort of thing. So what we've done is just every property is someone's castle. It sounds a bit cliche, but it is. So we use the best photographers, the best videographers, the exact same campaign, just obviously it's a smaller property, but we don't compromise it because it's a $300,000 home. When you sit with an owner and you want to say, look, this is the price, you can imagine you have to tick every box. And if I can say to my clients, look, we've had 50,000 views in total in the last week, and this is the offer. The old cliche, it only takes one buyer. We can say, look, it does take one buyer, but that one buyer that we've found at the moment isn't seeing enough value, but it's not because of the marketing. The marketing's worked. So often agents blame the price, but if the marketing's poor, if I stood out in front with a pizza box and shook it all day, unless the neighbour on the other side of the road buys it, I can't say it's overpriced because it hasn't sold. But if you market a property well and give it every bit of exposure, then you can say to the owner, we've done everything. We've done this, we've done that. Here's what it is. It is the price. But you owe it to your owner to give yourself the best marketing.
Yeah, I agree. You mean we were having this discussion last week about this whole idea of off-market transaction. Well, it's either for sale or it's not for bloody sale. And if it's for sale, advertise.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't hide it under your bed. Hey, we'll just move on. We were talking earlier.
I'm selling.
No, you go, Shane. Got a delay here.
Yeah.
I was just okay. Let's move
the
on.
The off-market thing, and I do. With off-market, I do sell a fair bit off-market. But what I'm saying to my owners is, as long as you understand, we've hit our database, but there's always people coming into the market. And if you're prepared to only do certain things, you will never know. And I think if you've got one crack at getting top dollar, push it to the marketplace. Then you, at least, even if you get that same price, at least you know you've given it every opportunity, and you won't be sitting back 3 years later going, "Oh, if only we did that."
Yeah.
To me, it makes a lot of sense.
Totally agree.
Absolutely. Hey, just to move on, we've got a couple of other things to talk about. We talk about, the sort of the Perth markets, hasn't been as strong as we'd like it to be, and it's bouncing back. But there's a lot of talk at the moment about, is this the right time to get rid of stamp duty? The talk about stamp duty has been around for a long time. Do we think it will impact the market, or do we think it's going to bloody happen? And what impact will it have? Russ, do you have any thoughts?
Stamp duty in WA?
Yeah. Too much. About on let's just say median house price of 500,000. It works out to be around about 21,000, I think.
Yeah, so it's about 4 or 5%.
Just sold one at 800,000. 32,000 was the stamp duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we think?
What the biggest obstacle? I would say more than stamp duty. I'm going to go, Mark. I think the bigger obstacle we're finding in WA is to get that kickstart from entry-level housing. So in WA, you can get a loan up to 98% through Keystart, but they'll only lend if you have an income of up to 115,000 till just recently. Now it's 150,000. So we had people having not a big enough deposit to go big 4 because you need 5 or 10%. And in WA and established housing, you get 0 as a first home buyer. You get 10,000 for new. So what's happened is they can't get that entry level kicking, which means the 300 goes to 500 and the 500 goes to 600. So stamp duty hasn't been as much of an issue at the moment because we need that kickstart. And unfortunately, with the grant, which has just been spoken about recently, where they've lifted it to 25,000 plus the 10, you're encouraging more people to go and build. In WA, we have too much new building realistically happening and oversupply. So that's not ideal, obviously, for any growth. But the stamp duty, I think, really needs to be looked at for downsizes. That's the big one where basically they're trying to free up big blocks of land to go maybe into a care facility, and then they're slugged so much at every stage. That's what I think they should really look at.
Yeah. What do you think, Russ? How do you think it's going to affect the rest of the country? You think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Not a bad thing. The first home buyers grant came in during the GFC in this particular area, which, as you know, appeals to investors and first home buyers. It pushed the price along. Look, I think stamp duty is too high. We're at 5.5% roughly. It should be sort of half that, but people end up bidding and spending that and giving it to the vendor. So I'm not convinced that is a way to push the market along. I'm very sceptical of the whole let's get rid of stamp duty push at the moment, particularly here in Victoria, because they want to replace it with, my understanding is, a land tax of sorts on the family home and other investments you may have. So it will be replaced with another tax, and if it's land tax at 1%, over 5 years you paid the stamp duty, and over 10 years you doubled the stamp duty. So that's what I'm hearing is what's going to replace stamp duty if they get rid of it. I'd rather keep the stamp duty if that's the case.
Well, I mean, and the other lever that they've got up their sleeve, it'll either be land tax or it'll be if it goes to a federal level, it'll be GST. But I think that if you look at the US, for example, people transact real estate in the US just so flippantly because the transaction costs aren't huge. You know, you don't have to consider that sort of 5%. You can buy and sell a year later and buy something else and sell a year later, and you don't have these massive transactional costs. In Australia, I mean, if you buy a house, sell, and then rebuy, your transaction costs at that point sit around about sort of 12 to 15%, 5% on the way in, 2 or 3% on the way out, another 5% on the way in. If you think how hard it is just to save a 10% deposit, I mean, even you spoke about a 5% deposit, Shane. So bloody hard to save 5%. And if that 5% is going to stamp duty, I think it's a good thing, even if they do take it to land tax and smooth it out. 1% might be, I agree, Russ, it's probably a bit much. But if you smooth GST, I'll get it the third time around. If you smooth stamp duty out over 10 or 15 years, then that actually frees the market up for people to transact and move around a little bit more. So it's a good thing, but let's see what they replace it with.
The other thing is, Mark, they've come up with this initiative today, the federal government to kick along the economy by giving, was it $25,000 if you do a certain amount of, like a substantial renovation, they're going to give you $25,000 towards it, and a larger amount if you build a new home. But quite frankly, I can't see that working either. I reckon that will mean that a tradie will come straight in and go, are you qualifying for that that grant? And then they'll just add it to the cost of his build anyhow. I don't think it'll spark anything along at all. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, if it gets more,
I don't think the bigger issue is that whilst you go, Mark.
Nah, there you go.
Okay, I'll go. I think I heard Frydenberg. They only expect, I think, about 7,000 applicants under that policy before December. Now, I don't know many people in Western Australia that would have the money to be building or doing a renovation of 150,000 that are earning less than 200,000. I mean, realistically, they're just scraping in to buy a property at that level. To renovate it is almost what a home would cost for many circumstances. So I think it's a bit of it looks really good on the surface, but I can't see many people qualifying unless they're very, very wealthy parents who have bought the property and they say, well, you can renovate it now. That's probably the only time I can see that taking place.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a Indian giver, as they say. You know, you've promised something that's really got no substance. Yeah.
And look, and maybe that's their way of throttling that a little bit, you know. But look, as we all know, any injection into the real estate market, the building trade, I mean, it's such a massive part of our economy. Keeping the building trade going, the sparkies and the plumbers and the chippies and the tilers. I mean, keeping all of that work going is really, really important. Hey guys, we're just about out of time. As always, when you're having time flies when you're having fun. We'll come back. I'll just show this little piece and then we'll come back and say goodbye. But I just sort of thought now that I don't think we want to show too many more bloody COVID, what are we called, COVID videos. But I think that as we come out of this thing and we can start going back to you haven't seen this, Russ, Shane, you haven't. Look, it's not. There's no nudity. There's none of that. We get in trouble for doing that sort of stuff.
So it's not our shower scene, then? It's
not our shower scene. We've been told we couldn't do the shower scene. If anyone wants to see the shower scene, then we'll have a vote. But,
send us a private message. We'll send it to you.
Private message. There has been some great things that have come out of COVID, and I think this woman sums it up better than anyone. Oh, hang on. I need sound for this. Stop share. Start share. There you go. Tony Short.
down. It's pretty shit for a lot of people. You know, it's really stressful and it's getting a lot of people down. But the one good thing about it is spending quality time with your children. Mom! Fuck off!
It is a little bit, it has been a little bit, the number of times, I've got 4 kids, and the number of times I've heard, Mom! I just go back to bloody school and just leave us alone a little bit.
Are they back at school in WA, Shane?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So WA, probably the greatest state. Obviously, that's what I think. We've just started to free things up from the 6th. So we can do a lot of things. We can go to restaurants. We can pretty much do everything except shake hands. So
there you go. Are you Dockers, West Coast Eagles?
Interesting thing about I'm a Carlton man, so it's been a long time since I've spoken about football. I'm only 21 years of age.
When was the last premiership, Mark?
95.
95, was it? Yeah, okay. Beat Essendon, is that right? Beat the Bombers.
We did beat the Bombers. I think that's right. I was actually overseas, but the last premiership, the last real premiership for Carlton was when we beat Essendon in '99 in the prelim final. We didn't give a stuff about the grand final back then. We did, but just beating the Bombers and knocking them out of the bloody grand final was that was the last quasi premiership for us. Guys, we've run out of time. Shane, Simon, thank you so much for joining us. Love to have you back at some stage. Rusty, as always.
No worries, John.
There's a bit of a delay. It was a bit tricky as we got through there.